to another edition of Be the Change Georgia, where we amplify the voices of the inspiring business leaders surrounding the B Corp and social impact movements across the Southeast to help you learn how to build your legacy at the intersection of people, planet, purpose, and profit. Today, there are more than 8,000 B Corps in over 80 countries and 180 different industries, unified by one common goal: transforming the global economy to benefit all people, communities, and the planet. If you want to learn how to plug into our purpose-driven business community alongside the inspiring leaders we feature on this show, check us out at blocalgeorgia.com or on Instagram or Facebook at blocalgeorgia, and we'll hope to meet you at our next event. Today you'll have the opportunity to learn from Savannah Seydel, Vice President of Sustainability at Better Earth. Better Earth is an Atlanta-based certified B Corp compostable food service packaging company dedicating to advancing regenerative circularity across the food service industry. With a unique background that includes a double major in creative writing and environmental sciences at Emory University, Savannah has spent her career connecting human narratives with urgent environmental challenges, from impact filmmaking with exposure labs to sustainable manufacturing with Better Earth. In our conversation, Savannah shares how a chance meeting on a ski lift led to her leading sustainability at Better Earth, the incredible progress of compostable packaging technology over the last 20 years, and how she's supporting other female changemakers through her rapidly growing initiative, Sustaining Women. Stay tuned to discover how to embrace incremental progress and drive systemic change in your own community. Enjoy. Today's episode of Be the Change Georgia is brought to you by Rataza. Rataza is a B Corp and social enterprise striving to make local food more accessible and affordable while directly supporting our community's farmers, reconnecting consumers to their food, and feeding families struggling with food insecurity. Learn more at rataza.com. Savannah Seydel, welcome to Be the Change Georgia. Excited to finally have you on.
Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I know it's fun. It's all these sometimes just feel like I'm just talking to friends and then recording recording the conversation for the world with maybe some more in-depth questions.
Might quite literally be what is happening.
Considering we have another call in like 30 minutes. So I am excited to have you on because we've been collaborating on B Corpish stuff and Build Southeast for years. So I'm excited to share the Better Earth story, but I also love getting into some of the personal story and the personal journey. And you have a very interesting one. So I kind of want to get started with that, and then we'll get into changing the world through compostable products and using less plastic and all the great things. So creative writing. I believe that is your background, and that might be a first for us because I love that question of like, how did you get into this work? So can you talk about like that transition and like that skill set translating into what you do today? But then I'd also love if we can pack all of that in as well with some of your, I don't want to say your childhood, but like your lineage of service and giving back and making the world a better place.
I am the proud daughter of two public servants. My dad is a now retired captain in the Coast Guard, and my mom has always been in education. And so for me growing up, I always saw work as service and as service to others. I never saw it as anything else. And I think it rings true that I have found myself in the environmental movement. My sister is an ENT pediatric surgeon, and my youngest sister is following in my mother's footsteps and is an incredible public school teacher in Nashville, Tennessee. So that's a bit around the context of who I am and how I was raised. And because of my father's role, we got to grow up in some incredible places. So I was born in San Francisco, California. Then we went to Wilmington, North Carolina, Seaside, Oregon, and then we landed in Charleston, South Carolina. And my mom was like, "We're going to stay here."
You're done
um,
moving.
yes, yeah, we're done moving. So my dad came to us. But I got to grow up around some of the most beautiful beaches in the country and run around and be free and be wild in them. And I was also able to collect stories from all of these different places. And I found that I really loved that. And I loved learning more about people's place in this world, about people's association with their natural world. And I became so fascinated with it that I actually created a little business when I was in fifth grade. And I started writing people into stories in exchange for a lunchbox pudding or something like that. It was my first entrepreneurial go. And we got the opportunity to share our journal entries after lunchtime in during school, and so I would check in to see who wanted to be written into the next story, and it would be a ghost story, and and in the South, and I got all these friends, collected a lot of pudding, and one by one got to tell those stories. Well, it manifested into an application to Charleston County School of the Arts. And I had the pleasure and privilege of being able to study creative writing for my most formative years from age 11 to 18. And then I double majored in creative writing and environmental sciences when I went to Emory University later
That
on.
is such a random double major, by the way.
Yep. Yep. And it's because I continued to, being fortunate to grow up in such beautiful places, I continued to learn about how important it was to learn about the fabric between people and place. It's very niche, it's very nuanced, but it was something that I continued to explore, and I just learned more about, for example, the Gullah Geechee culture is very important in the South Carolina Low Country, and learning about how the sweetgrass was harvested from an area, how it's braided into such beautiful trays and roses and bowls, and learning about the importance of that culture where I grew up. Likewise, I hopped onto shrimp boats and got to learn more about the local shrimping industry and how important it was to our community. And through all of that, it came to me how important it was to tie our story to place and how inextricably linked it is. And so, as I've grown through my own professional journey, while I'm not always 100% the creative writer that I was in my youth, I know the value of being able to connect someone's story to the environmental issues that are so urgent today. Because once we connect that story and help them find their voice within this broader story, then we can really empower them to take their own actions in it.
Wow, you just made me realize too that some of like the trash walks that I do, where I'm like, that's what we're doing when Chad and I travel around the southeast and we meet these people, and it's like those are the stories we're collecting. We haven't done anything with them, but it is really interesting the people's connection to the place that they're in and why they're so passionate about making their little corner of the planet a better place.
Exactly.
Wow. So how did that lead you to Better Earth? So obviously we got the environmental degree as well. But how did that lead you? Like how do we end up here? Um, Again, kind of changing your little corner of the world as best you can.
Well, I've certainly continued to run a circuitous path. There wasn't a clean line from Charleston, South Carolina to compostable food service packaging, but I think that's what makes it fun. I've always been curious about big change and sticky problems. And I started right at Emory and was very curious about how I could inform environmental policy. I saw policy as one of the most important levers that we have to make lasting change. It led me to Columbia University, where I got my master's in public administration and environmental science and policy, and the incredible opportunity to intern at the United Nations Development Program. And through that work, I learned that it was a little too bureaucratic for what I wanted, and probably a little bit slower than the change that I wanted to see and be a part of. And that the problems were way too urgent for me to sit in a cubicle in New York and file away reports. And so, with that, I just continued to lean into what I knew. It was a very turbulent time for environmental jobs. And I hunkered down and built out a blog, which a lot of people did in 2015. And when you put founder by your name in New York City and you're a 21-year-old, you can somehow find yourself in unique rooms that you otherwise wouldn't. So I would say I bluffed and pretended into a lot of places. And that led me on stage at an incredible conference interviewing a South Carolina Republican congressman who is passionate about pursuing bipartisan climate policy. And when I was in that conversation with him, who was in the audience, but Jeff Orlowski, who is the executive director and founder of Exposure Labs. So he created an impact documentary group to bring big stories to life, something, right, that I was incredibly passionate about. So he had already had behind him Chasing Ice and was just about to launch what would become the Netflix original Chasing Coral. And after I got off stage, we had some conversations. And a few months later, I was joining their team to learn more about how I could translate these big stories to audiences around the Southeast, right? And get these harder, stickier problems like, massive extinction of our coral reefs in the face of bleaching events and warming temperatures into the rooms across Aiken, South Carolina, Conyers, Social Circle, Georgia, right? And then connecting the dots to that and what was happening in our hometowns. And it was an incredible journey for 2 years, connected with over 11,000 people here in the South. And I was ready for something different. And crazy enough, I was on a ski lift on a family reunion in Utah and ended up sitting next to who became the CEO of Better Earth, Joseph Build. We started having a conversation. He had just come on board and he was sharing with me passionately about the opportunities that he was seeing and the concerns that he was seeing in the food service industry and the ability for ripple effects just by changing one thing, right? Food service packaging and the opportunity that that would have across a broader industry. And he said that he was looking for somebody who could lead the sustainability strategy. And he asked me, all right, who do you think it should be? And my hand was raised by the end of the ski lift. And then he kept saying, no, Savannah, who do you think it could be? And I'm like, Joseph, me. so, so I hopped on board and I'm condensing a lot here, but all to say that for me, the beating drum has always been exploring broader problems and ways that I can help inspire others to create ripple effects through that change. And for the past now 7 years, I have had the fortune of being able to do that with the Better Earth team.
I don't know that I've ever heard a ski lift story. No, it's funny. We have our morning team call, and one of our guys, he's his like biggest new client, but he goes, yeah, I was at a summer concert series in line for the porta potties, and that's how we connected. And now we're doing all this like cool work. He does experiential stuff for us, and it was like, you never know who you're going to talk to on a ski lift or in line at a porta potty or.
And it's true. I think something that I really try to emphasize to young people today, because yet again, we are experiencing a very turbulent job market, especially for those that are passionate about impact driven work. And something that I always tell folks is just to continue to lean into your passions, into what brings you joy, and the opportunities will come. If you continue to be unabashedly yourself, you become an expert in being you. And then people will hire you for being you, not to fill a role. Because if someone is filling a role, that means that they can easily be replaced. And so when you are hiring Savannah, when you are hiring Nathan, it is so much harder for someone to replace you for being you and bringing your qualities and strengths to that organization.
Damn, I'm going to send these students to you. They always come to me. I don't think I give them that good of advice. It is hard though, because I mean, you're seeing that in this space too. Of like, yeah, like
Yes.
I think that the jobs are still there. I think that I had breakfast the other day with our mutual friend Justin, co-founder of Compost Now, and he was talking, and he said something that like I can't get out of my head. This is generational work that we're doing. Like he's like, I don't expect like 100% market saturation in home composting, but I realized that the next, it's a half of my job is educating the next generation on how to properly compost and sort and the importance of soil health. And it was very interesting to realize that like we're doing work that is, we will not see the finish line in our life. But I think there's something about us, because I get told all the time, say no more. You just admitted that you talk to students all the time, and I'm sure you get the random introductions from people at Emory or Georgia Tech. They're like, you talk to Savannah. But is there something important about pouring back into that generation for what we do? Is that what it
Mhm.
is? Is that why we are incapable of saying no?
Is this a podcast or a therapy session?
I
What are we
don't
doing?
know. I just kind of that thought just came to me. I'm like, what is it about? But I do. I again, it's that intergenerational work I think that we're doing of like we're not going to get every restaurant using compostable plates, and then on the back end also then hiring somebody like Compost Now to do compost, to pick up all the compost and properly turn the stuff back into dirt.
I think that working intergenerationally is critical for this work, right? If we think about the broader mantra of thinking 7 generations ahead, that is what we always have to do, right? And because we will continue to see the ripple effects. And think about the physics of a wave, right? It starts as this slow turbulence that then moves and moves forward until it fully crests and crashes. We are at the beginning, right? Or even at the middle. And I know that the work that we're all doing will continue to manifest one day. And all I can do is just help push it forward. And as expeditiously as I can because things are so urgent. And for me too, I also look at this as from the lens of being a mother of 2 incredible kids. And also as a proud daughter to my parents as well as my parents in law. We have big shoes to fill around the generations that came before us. And we have a duty and a responsibility to protect this place for our children and our children's children. And we have so much to learn from the generations before us and the generations after us, because this is an incredibly dynamic time where we do need to hunker down to the foundations of those that pioneered a lot of this work, as well as continue to learn from those that are a bit younger than us and maybe a bit savvier than us, because there are so many different dynamic variables at play. And for me, I think it is critical to have multiple voices in the room in order to really understand and move forward.
You said something that's also stuck with me because now we're talking intergenerationally, and you just kind of touched on it. But even in the last like 20 years, I mean, what was it? I mean, basically the cardboard egg carton was kind of like the genesis of some of this stuff. That the fact that now we are like, or are we nearing a tipping point with some of this of both from like because part of it too, the hurdle to adoption, and I've worked with restaurants with my students, is the price point for some of these people. Are we getting to a tipping point where the technology is catching up? Kind of like EVs and solar, where it used to be this like luxury thing. Now it's just a car option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great opportunity for me to pull back and help introduce, right? A lot of the work that we're doing at Better Earth. So, Better Earth is a compostable food service packaging company, an Atlanta-based B Corp, and we are mission driven towards advancing regenerative circularity in the food service industry. We zero in on the food service industry, and this goes back to the ski lift pitch that I got almost 10 years ago, because food and food service is truly a pinnacle in terms of the broader climate conversation. If we think about our waste, 1/3 of all food is wasted, and our landfills comprise of almost 1/3 packaging material. So if you combine all of that, there is a huge shift of stuff that we are creating, making, using, and then dumping, right? That is the linear economy in simplest form. And at Better Earth, what we're striving to do, and what I was so excited when I heard Joseph share this with me, is create an opportunity to bend that curve, right? And foster more of a circular economy where we are sourcing regenerative and rapidly renewable materials as opposed to extractive materials like petroleum based plastic, and using them, right, for the time that we need them, and then designing them from the front end so that they can be thoughtfully disposed of through composting. You were mentioning Justin earlier. Compost Now is an incredible partner of ours. And through composting, we're able to create packaging that breaks back down into its natural elements in 90 to 180 days or less and go back into the soil. And we've gone so far to actually then work with composting partners to purchase up the compost that originally had packaging and food waste mixed in, and then apply it back to the soil that grows our materials in the first place. It's a project that we've been really excited about. And you were touching earlier around where we are at within this system. So, compostable packaging feels pretty synonymous now. We see it in restaurants, in many places around the country, and it's grown a lot. But to what you were hitting on, it's still a very nascent industry. It started as the humble egg carton about 20 years ago, right? That is molded fiber technology, as we call it in the business. And through that, we have been able to truly advance what technology can offer us in this manufacturing space to create cups, bowls, lids, trays, anything that is needed. And most importantly, that can help offer a different and more sustainable solution for food contact packaging. I also, alongside Better Earth, wear the hat of being a proud board member of the Biodegradable Products Institute. They are the leading certifier for compostable packaging. And for me, I joined because I think that it is critical to continue to have transparency and clear labeling when navigating sustainable products. Because greenwashing is rampant, and people are going to place natural, eco, green, oxo biodegradable on whatever they can because they know that buyers like us are going to want to lean in and pay extra to buy it. So these products, compostable products that are certified and verified to break down in those commercial composting settings to ensure that there's no harmful impacts to us as humans and to the soil, and continue to have clear labeling to indicate as such to a consumer. And so how have we grown, right? So we started with the egg carton, we've advanced technology, there's clear labeling available through BPI and others. And now my hope is that we are beginning to reach a tipping point because just like what you mentioned with other systems change, this is hard, right? We have to navigate building the train tracks as the train is going down because compostable packaging is one element of a broader system. We're designing that packaging, but then we also want to ensure that it's thoughtfully disposed of in a composting environment. And we can all agree that we need to continue to grow that infrastructure. So, a lot of my work, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners too that are in this space, is navigating a lot of different things at once, is working to grow the system while we're also optimizing the product. And unfortunately, in the environmental movement, there's a point of tension around, and again, as a mother, I don't like to use this phrase lightly, but throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It could be easy to just lift our hands up and feel exacerbated and say, there's not composting infrastructure. I'm not going to do this. It's going to go to the landfill. But then look at EVs, look at solar. And with electric vehicles, they are a powerful systems change. They offer us the complete option to transition away from being dependent on petroleum-based fuel to push forward our cars. Now, when they're plugging them in here in Georgia, we have to think about the energy mix that we're plugging into. Do we stop just because Georgia Power might have coal and they have continued to have coal in their mix? No, because we know that we can continue to work on that alongside growth of this system, right? We are seeing both EVs being more and more populated in the market. We're seeing more and more EV chargers along interstates and highways. And we are seeing EV owners as a coalition continuing to shout from the rooftops to get access for more clean energy to power their vehicles. And a story that I like to share is that there was a time when Georgia was the second biggest EV market behind California. And we don't get to say that often. So I like to toot that horn whenever I can. California and Georgia were neck and neck. Georgia had a lot of advantageous EV purchasing programs at that time for consumers. And Georgia's energy mix was not the best. But thanks to a broader coalition and thanks to EVs being that symbol within the state, we saw over the next few years incredible progress in expansion of clean energy options for homeowners and residents within the state of Georgia with Georgia Power. I see compostable packaging as the same. It is a symbol and it helps drive that demand, right? We are building those train tracks towards creating access for more composting infrastructure. And now, thanks to the adoption of extended producer responsibility policies, which is in simplest form, producers rather than taxpayers helping to pay to dispose of those widgets, we are seeing more composting infrastructure being a part of the conversation of EPR legislation. So the system is changing, it's growing. And going back to your point, Nathan, It's something that's going to take time, but the progress in a short period of time has been nothing short of remarkable.
I love it. It's progress over perfection.
Yes.
100% of. I think last year too. I was at that. Because I got to give a keynote at the BPI summit, and what a room of where you're like, it's. I mean, you're supposed to be the dumbest person in the room. It means you're in a really smart room. But the scientists that were in there working on some of these things, and I mean, it was everything from science to the salespeople to where I was just blown away by how far we've gotten. And so I kind of like tweaked my keynote to talk about, we've put in all this groundwork and we've been training to climb a mountain, and now we're in the parking lot. Like, let's go
Mhm.
scale this thing. But it's because we haven't, I don't know, we get so stuck on, like finding the flaw in today's society. So that makes the whole thing like that negates everything. It's worthless. It's pointless. Start over. And I think it's so cool. What you just summed up you should run for office, by the way.
I've got work to do.
Trust me, people ask me that too, and I'm like, I'm good,
Mhm.
thanks.
Mm.
I'm gonna stick with the private sector. I do want to ask, like, is that what gives you hope? Is it the progress that you've seen in the faith and some of the younger leaders you've met? What gives you hope that like we are on this journey and we're making it?
Mm. I appreciate the question because I also want to share and be honest that it's really hard. It's hard sitting in that position where you're constantly convincing, empowering, engaging people to believe in this mission and vision alongside you, right? To believe in that story. And I think it's fair to share that. And for anybody else who's listening and navigates being in that middle of systems change, just know that you're not alone and that it is exhausting sometimes. And so, how do I ground myself and pull back and feel hope? Well, first, it's with the rituals that I do myself. What can I control? What do I have agency over? Well, I am proud that my daughter is growing up in a household where she's driving around in an electric vehicle. I could not have imagined that as a kid. How incredible. And secondly, she knows what to compost. She proudly throws those banana peels into our compost bin at home that goes to the Compost Now facility. And she loves that chore. And that she gets the opportunity to pick blueberries in our backyard, that we have our own garden where we're cultivating our own food right here that she can enjoy alongside all of us, brings me the joy that I need to continue to do this. So that's at a micro level, at a personal level, the rituals that help sustain me. But then more broadly, what gives me hope in the work that we're doing is to see these small ripple effects transition into bigger and bigger change. So at Better Earth, I've been tracking the data that I think offers literal data points to the hope that I feel. And we have been tracking the growth in compost infrastructure for the last 4 years. It's a project that I pursued alongside my incredible colleague, Blair Michael. And we have been able to see that now there is composting infrastructure in all 50 states. There is over 1,300 drop off locations across the country. And what I mean by that is free and accessible places for anybody to drop off their compost for it to be transitioned back into compostable material. On top of that, EPR legislation is changing. So we've had an evolution in how we are looking at EPR. And now, as more and more legislation is coming down the pike, we are seeing inclusion of composters and compostable packaging on advisory councils to help support the implementation and rollout. We are seeing directed funding to help grow composting infrastructure and education to help engage residents and consumers of what to go where. And this really matters because going back to what I was saying earlier, environmental policy is one of the most powerful levers that we have. And to see the systems level change within those frameworks and tools is incredibly exciting, alongside the continued growth that we are seeing in terms of access. And this work matters. I think what also gives me hope is the flip side of the work that we're doing. If we didn't do this, what are the options, right? If we continue to lean in to what we have and lean into petroleum-based plastics for the areas where we do need a one-time use item, we are continuing to expose ourselves to persistent microplastic pollution, right? We're continuing to expose ourselves to health impacts and health risks. And we are continuing to expose our environment, something that you see every day, right? Choking in plastic. And I'm a Coast Guard captain's daughter, right? I grew up by the ocean. I've seen this firsthand. And for me, it's the drumming heartbeat too of wanting to ensure that I'm protecting these natural spaces so that they can continue to protect us.
That is absolutely beautiful. I just sat here smiling the whole time of like, I mean, I think all of us need to hear that. And I'm sitting here smiling because I mean, social impact burnout and this work and change systems change is exhausting. It is, and a lot of times there is, I mean, I think that's why we're all so close. There's a lot of times where we just, how do we continue to do this work? And it is finding the hope. It's picking the blueberries. It's those little moments of progress that we get to see. Um, they give us all hope. So I mean, I'm trying to say something eloquent after that, but I don't really have anything to follow that up.
Yes. Well, and it's true. And I think one thing too that I want to emphasize within the work that we do is we also vacillate within navigating a single use product, right? And for me as an environmental advocate, I wrestle with that too. And what we are offering is that immediate solution to help with the ladder of change. And for me personally, and a mantra within our organization, is we work within reducing overall packaging. We are constantly asking, how can we ensure that this is not needed, right? So we are working and educating food service providers to ensure that they're aware of the opportunities for what we call SKU consolidation. Do you really need all of these things? Do you need this cutlery wrapped, right? And so we vacillate between number one, finding that immediate solution so that we can switch over, right, to provide the most massive impact. And then secondarily, serving as partners and guides to hold their hand and work with our partners to help them consolidate down the overall packaging that they need. Design solutions that reduce the overall burden. So recently we launched a dispenser so that people didn't need sachet wrapped cutlery, right? But that can just pull it out. It seems pretty intuitive, but we need those types of
We
things, right,
wrap this
within the food
plastic
service
in
industry.
plastic.
Yes, and then continuing to innovate within the reusable sector. So I also want to note that too, that when you are sitting within a mission-based organization, you are navigating a lot of different variables at once. But what makes it easier is orienting around that broader mission, right? We are advancing regenerative circularity, and it looks like a few different things at once as we continue trudging forward towards that goal.
Yes, and we all, I think everybody too, I'm reading a book right now called, Meditations for Mortals, and one of them was you can't care about everything. As we sit here now, like, doling out some of this advice, like, you have found your lane where you can make significant impact in the world. I think we and not that we can't care about everything, but we have access to information. We know about every world calamity. We know about every bleached coral reef. We just know about everything. So finding that passion that you mentioned earlier and really pursuing that passion and figuring out where you can make your impact and make your ripple that will turn into that wave that eventually builds and comes on shore. So yeah, I think it's really beautiful to hear this. And I want to talk about one more of your ripples, because you recently, I don't know where you have the time to mom and wife and um, BPI board, and never say no. But you also launched a women's sustainability initiative in Atlanta. So tell us about that and what spurred that, and obviously whatever, plug it as well so that people know that it exists.
Yes, thank you. This goes back to the therapy session. Yes, I need to work on saying no more. But there's too
It's
much
so
to
I just
do.
said yes to another board. I don't know what I'm doing.
There's too much to do. But yes, I grew up seeing my mom serve as a mentor for so many women. It was very normal for us to have young women in the household that were like extensive aunts, for us. And I saw her bring in these women into her arms, into our homes, and help them. And that always stuck with me. As I mentioned, my father was in the military, so he was gone a lot. I was one of three sisters and my mom and all of the women that she mentored. And so I got to see firsthand what that looked like and creating this safe haven of support. And as I have grown within my own profession, I was craving that kind of community again because we've talked about the exhaustion that comes from systems change and the feeling of burnout, the anxiety. Well, it's triple fold for navigating it as a woman within this space. There's additional pressures that are unseen and unheard that kind of get tucked away. And there's also additional pressures within the workplace. And after COVID, I decided to take action alongside my colleague Blair to bring together a book club. We brought together a few women that were in the sustainability space to read All We Can Save, which was an incredible book by Catherine Wilkinson and Ayanna Johnson that brought together feminine voices in the climate movement. And people really liked it. And they said, can we do this again? Can we meet up? And organically, we began hosting networking events every quarter. People would come, then they would bring a friend, then that friend would bring a friend. You know how it goes, Nathan.
Hmm.
And it went like that organically for now 5 years. And so what started as a 5-person book club on Zoom has grown into a dynamic and thriving 800-person community, both here in Atlanta and across 5 states around the country. And it's been such an incredible journey. One of my advisors calls it a circle of light, and it really is for all of us here. We lean on each other, we support each other, and this community is incredibly intergenerational. It represents vast differences in experience, in leadership, and interests. And I've decided to give it a more formal home and a place where people can literally and figuratively come back to. And so Atlanta Women in Sustainability has now transitioned into what I call sustaining women. And I see that as both a name and a call to action because we do need a space for women passionate about building a sustainable future to come to and create resources and community to sustain ourselves so that we can sustain this important work, so that we can keep going, especially when we know that the change is in front of us, but might be generations ahead. And so Sustaining Women is a community that folks can come to, join us at local events here in Atlanta. We recently started a formal chapter in Chicago, and we have a digital ecosystem called our Member Hub that folks can subscribe to get ongoing resources, professional development, masterclasses, and workshops. And most importantly, connections and introductions across this thriving community. So if you're interested, please come and join us or reach out to me to learn more.
That is the ripple too. Like, I mean, you think about what that accelerates. It's those connections in the room of person A that didn't know person X meeting, and that's we're just accelerating the progress. That so as fun as it is to say no, we're glad you keep saying yes.
It's really fun to say
It's so much fun. We'll sleep when we're dead. Um,
yes.
so, well, Savannah, thanks so much. I feel like I could keep picking your brain and keep getting a little. Again, I love hosting this for the fact that I just get to sit and listen to brilliant people who are trying to change the world and sit here and pick up little nuggets of wisdom from leaders like you. So thanks for all that you're doing in Atlanta and beyond and just making the world a better place.
I appreciate it and sharing the gratitude back to you. Thank you for creating this space for these important conversations. And most importantly, thank you for the work that you're doing to help bring forward impact driven businesses. We didn't touch on it as much in the broader conversation, but being a B Corp and going through that process with you has been so important for me personally, as well as for our business. B Corp offers the critical framework and skeleton that fast growing businesses like ours need to help ensure that as we continue to grow, that we have the templates that we need, the infrastructure that we need, and the resources to go back to continue to anchor us in that lighthouse of what our mission is, right? So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on, and thanks again for just being a leader in our community.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up another edition of Be the Change Georgia. We're grateful, as always, for the opportunity to serve you with this content and grow this incredible community of purpose-driven B Corp leaders. If you haven't already, we would be grateful for you to rate the show wherever you get your podcasts by simply tapping the number of stars you think it deserves and sharing it with a friend. This helps us get the word out and continue to use our collective influence as a force for good. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the help from our production team at Chat with Leaders Media. Learn how you can launch your own podcast to grow your business at chatwithleaders.com. Thanks again for listening, and now go be a leader worth following.